Welcome back to another ensorcelled episode of Talking Lamar. Today, I'm talking about spending summers at the drugstore with my mama. Let's get to it.
What are you talking about?
What are you talking about?
Sorry, I forgot what I was talking about.
What are you talking about?
I am talking to you.
That's just what I was talking about.
It's Talking Lamar.
I've probably mentioned this before, but my mama went to work at the drugstore lunch counter when I started school. Up until that time, she stayed home with me. And she went to work the same time that I started school, and she got off from work the same time I got out of school, so she could drop me off and pick me up. So from the first grade through the fourth grade, I stayed with my grandmother and granddaddy in the summer. Then after that's when she got the job, and I went to the drugstore with my mama. And so basically, I would just sit up there all day, and I'd read comic books and magazines, and then I'd walk around to all the stores in town because our town was built in a square. The downtown was a square, and the courthouse was right in the middle. And there was like a Wilson's 5 and Dime right next to the drugstore. On the other side, and they had all kinds of toys and candy counter and all you can imagine of a 5 and Dime. And then on the other side was the Atasco store that had bikes and sporting goods and toys and fishing stuff and guns and all kinds of hardware stuff. And then down below that, there was like a Bales and Cobb, which was a clothing store. And then they had a couple of jewelry stores. They had a Gallant and Belks. They had the post office, had a florist. And I'm going in all these stores. I mean, I'm just one after the other. And I'd talk to people when I was in the store. And then, if I got tired of that, then I'd come back to the drugstore and I'd read a little. So I'd read a little and walk a little, read some more and walk some more, and all day long. And after a couple of years, I got a little bit older, so I started waiting tables at lunchtime because right down the street was a sewing plant that had a bunch of women that sewed clothes, and it was called Hartwell Garment. And I mean, they had the cloth, but I mean, they made stuff. They made like jackets and all kinds of stuff, and they sold them. And so a lot of the ladies, they came to the drugstore to eat because we had all kinds of sandwiches, homemade egg salad, homemade tuna salad, hamburgers, ham sandwiches, grilled cheese, Campbell's soup. We had all kinds of stuff, hand-dipped ice cream. And then the drugstore had booths. So I would take their orders and basically talk shit to these women. And,
but you didn't even work there, right? You didn't have a job there.
No, I didn't have a job, but my mom said, why don't you just start taking orders? So I had a pad and a pencil. And so I would take their orders. And I was a pretty entertaining waiter. And I did pretty well on tips. But now I say that, when you're 11 or 12 years old, it don't take much to be pretty well. It was mostly change. There was not a whole lot of folding money going on back then. But I remember this one lady that came in every day. And I don't know how we got to saying this. It might have been because I watched Perry Mason a lot or whatever. And maybe I said ipso facto or something. And then she immediately shot back, is that so fatso? So like every time we saw each other, I mean, every day she'd come in. And whoever saw, if she saw me first or I saw her first, one of us would say ipso facto. And the other would say, is that so fatso? I remember this, and I don't know why, because it's so stupid. But it was, just something that we did. And the other ladies had different things that we would talk about and whatever. And I mean, it was a great time. I mean, it really, really was. And so one day, the guy that owned the drugstore, he was the druggist and he owned the drugstore. He gave me a paper sack and he said, if I give you this sack, can you take this to the bank? And the bank was about 5 blocks away, I guess. He said, can you take this to the bank, walk in, give it to them and stand there and bring back what they give you? And I said, yeah, I guess. He said, no, you can't stop anywhere in between. You can't go to no stores. Go straight to the bank, straight back. Don't talk to anybody. Just here to the bank and back. And I said, okay. And so I didn't know until years later. I was talking to my mom one day, and we were talking about that. And some days it might be $500. Some days it was $5,000, which was a lot of money back then. I mean, and I'm a kid walking down the street with a paper bag.
Wow.
And he figured who's going to pay attention to that. So, it was really weird. So I got to know everybody in the bank, and so it was pretty cool.
Lamar, I got to tell you, and Max knows this is true about me. I don't believe in any such thing as the good old days. I think that the best day is the one you're living in right now, and that it's a dangerous trap to be nostalgic about the past. But you, my friend, lived in the good old days because, as best I can
really
tell,
did.
you were representing a business that your mom worked for, but you didn't, and you were walking down the street in your Sears Tufkin husky jeans with a bag full of paper money. Like, it didn't belong to you.
Paper money.
A lot of money.
A lot of money. A lot of money. Yeah.
I love this. I mean, I love it.
And if there was anybody in walking distance that I could deliver the medicine to, they'd give me the medicine. And I'd go to these people's stores or wherever they were. And we had a doctor's office, Dr. Chicoli. He was about 2 blocks away. And they did a lot of business with the drugstore. And so I would go there a lot and take them drugs and stuff and pick up stuff and get paid and bring the stuff back. And I mean, I don't know. It was really pretty cool. It was an easy life.
I want you to think about, like, when you were running the Anheuser-Busch warehouse, I want you to imagine a world in which you spotted kind of an enthusiastic looking lad of about 12 loitering on his bicycle near the trucks and said, "Hey son, come here a second. Here, I'm going to give you this here sack. I want you to head on down to the Wells Fargo bank and just bring back whatever they give you." And mum's the word. Like, you would never do that. You couldn't.
No. This was, I got to tell you, I mean, it wasn't like we didn't have stuff going on, but we was pretty Mayberry. I mean, we really were. I mean, it was pretty good.
There is something to be said for a really small town. Like, the last town I lived in Wyoming was called Alpine, and it's about 30 miles east of Jackson Hole on the other side of the Snake River Canyon. And my best friend's dad was the mayor of Alpine, and he was also the postmaster of Alpine. And he also owned and ran the only store, like a little convenience market store in Alpine. And on Friday and Saturday nights, he and his wife, Pat, would put on their fancy show date clothes, cross the street to Jeep's bar, and play the guitar and sing for the people. That's some small town, right? That doesn't happen.
Yeah, that is. Yeah.
And that was a place where you didn't lock your doors. I mean, the only time people...
Yeah, exactly.
Alpine was really like, it was a touristy destination for summer and winter. We would see people who came in during ski season, a lot of hunters going into the Grays River Range during hunting season, and then summertime, camping, rafting and all. But even the tourists were regulars. Like, I grew up, there was a KOA campground in Alpine, and we grew up playing at the KOA campground, and there were families that would come to that campground every summer, and we would play with those kids every summer. So that was as close as I can get to your experience, but to my knowledge, no one I knew at that age was walking around with a paper bag full of thousands of dollars, somebody else's money.
I didn't know either. That's the thing about it. He just said, take the bag, don't mess with it, just, go. And so, it worked out good. And, I left town, and there's a lot of people that I graduated with that stayed back there. And at some point I say, well, they stayed here and they didn't do whatever. But I got to tell you, great place to raise your kids. I mean, really was. I mean, I
think you had going in your favor too. I think you were a really good kid, and I think you were probably one of those kids that you can look right into their eyes and their face, and there's no guile, there's no game, right? This kid is just painfully sincere. You were the Bobby Hill of Hartwell, Georgia, but not in the way, you know what I mean? Like, not in the goofy way, but you know what I'm saying? Like Bobby Hill from King of the Hill. No, bear with me. This is not an insult. Bobby Hill on King of the Hill. What makes that character so wonderful is how pure he is. right?
Yeah.
He's so pure. He wants to be a rodeo clown. He has his dreams. He's painfully sincere. If you're making fun of him, it goes right over his head. Like, he's just so pure. And that's what you must have been like as a little boy. So you had that going for you, but then you had something else going for you, and that is your mama must have had a reputation in town for being like straight up. This woman will never mess with you. Do not mess with her. And if that boy steps 1 foot out of line, she'll deal with it.
Yeah. And like I say, I would hang around in these people's stores all the day. I mean, and just look at stuff and whatever. But like the salespeople would come up and talk to me, and I'd talk to them, and everybody knew who I was. I mean, I was there all the time, so it was, But as I got to be a little bit older, somewhere along the line, I had read every comic book, magazine, Peanuts, paperback on the rack. And so I'm just started thumbing through random books. And I had a few books that was a little bit different than anything I'd ever read. I had more of a little bit of a more mature nature, if you will. And so they were interesting, but they were puzzling too. And then I've told y'all this before. I happened upon a solid black paperback, and the cover said, "The Sensuous Man." And the cover said, "The Sensuous Man," and at the bottom it said, "The first how-to book for the man who wants to be a great lover." Now, I was not sure whatsoever what sensuous meant, but if I knew one day when I grew up, if I was ever going to be a lover, I'd want to be really great at it,
Eager to please.
Yeah. So I did not read this in the drugstore. I smuggled it to the car. So, because sometimes I'd go out to the car and take a nap because we parked up under the shade trees on the square and whatever, and I'd go out there and take a nap. So I smuggled it out so I could read it a little bit in private. And I studied. I studied. This was information I knew, although I didn't really understand all the information. I knew that this would not be used for quite some time, but you can never know too much about any subject. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. You got this in your pocket, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Because I'm thinking when the day comes and I'm, determined to say, "Put me in, coach. I'm ready to play." The whole great love thing seemed like a lot of work, though, because if you look at this book in the table of contents, I mean, it's a lot of stuff. They had sensuality exercises 1 through 10.
Oh my God, 10 of them.
Yeah, the exercises. There was exercises for overall strength. There were exercises for the pelvis. There was exercises for the tongue. There were exercises for the tactile senses. I didn't know what the hell tactile senses was, but there was an exercise for it. And where to meet women, the search for the ideal woman, how to drive a woman crazy, all the stuff. And, I was intense on reading this stuff.
I'm not gonna make it. I'm not gonna make it to the end of this. Please tell me that in the car on the square under the shade tree that you were trying to figure out those pelvic exercises that were part of sensuality training.
No, because they sounded ridiculous. I mean, it really did. And when I got to this word, I was working it. I'm like, what is this? Erogen. I didn't know. I didn't know what this erogenous thing was, but there was zones to it, And so I'm. So I'm reading all this stuff, and they've got, the eyes, the nose, the ears, the mouth, etc. And then they got the positions, and I thought this was something you did with church because it was this missionary thing. All I'd ever heard missionary was when I went to church. But they had then they had stuff that I had no idea, like the floater, the seesaw. One was called the unemployment compensation. I don't know what in the hell that is. I didn't know,
My mind, the imagination runs wild. What position would the unemployment compensation be? Well, when you're on unemployment, you have to apply for a job every 10 minutes. So I'm assuming one party is bent over.
It says it was something about you had nowhere to go and nowhere to be, and you basically sort of sit there. I don't know. Like I say, now when I'm reading this, it was just like confusing as hell. It was crazy. Now, when it got to the point, it talked about these techniques. They were some of the names of that was the runaway pinch, the flesh, the feathery flick.
Oh my God.
The alternating flame. Here's my favorite. I can't even say this. The velvet buzzsaw.
Oh my God.
No, listen. There was also a chapter. There was a chapter that was called the sexual ethics chapter. You got to figure if you're going to be a professional and an expert at love, you have responsibilities to use your powers for good, evidently. and the chapters in that was, one of the chapters was don't gossip. I guess that means don't kiss and tell.
Yeah.
One was protect her, she will protect you for it. Or no, protect her and she will love you for it. That's what it was. And then the other one was leave married women alone and hands off other guys' girls. So this guy, he had some standards. I guess it's, I'm sure he was a dog, but
So I have to ask you a very uncomfortable question.
Oh
Here
my
it
God.
comes.
What?
At any time, did you make the connection between what you were reading and your mom and dad?
Oh, no. What are you talking about? It's ridiculous. I don't even know. No. I think I'm pretty much sure me and Troy was adopted. I don't know, man. No, that was ridiculous. No, don't even.
Wow. The velvet buzzsaw. I don't know what the velvet buzzsaw is, but again, the imagination is kind of like running wild.
Yeah. Now I will say, out of all the stuff, the most bizarre and off the wall tip. And I don't know if you remember, we talked about this probably 20 something years ago. The most bizarre off the wall tip was preparing for a date. When you get home from work and right before you get in the shower, it said to take your pocket handkerchief, because everybody back in the 70s, everybody carried a pocket handkerchief. You take your pocket handkerchief, and before you get in the shower, you wipe it through your crotch. And
the pheromones. Yeah.
And the pheromones, and they're not sweat, it's pheromones. That's what this is. Not sweat, it's pheromones. Then you fold your pocket square and put it in your top pocket of your jacket. And see, in other words, the whole word, I understood sweat. I don't know. I didn't understand what a pheromone was. But basically it said that this is catnip to the ladies. Catnip.
Wow.
And it says later in the evening that you're out dancing, as your date lays her head on your shoulder and she gets a whiff of those male pheromones, and bam, just like in the jungle, she is aroused.
Oh my God. Did you follow the directions?
Hell no, I didn't follow the directions. Because I'm thinking, what in the hell? No.
The book was written by a woman, I'm seeing.
Really? Because the only author it listed on the book was M.
Yeah, her name is Joan Terry Garrity, and then of course John Garrity and Len Foreman helped, but she wrote The Sensuous Woman as well.
Oh, okay.
I don't know what I would do if I knew that like my man had taken a swipe at himself with a handkerchief before getting in the shower. Like, I just don't even know what I would do with that.
This is crazy. It is crazy. But no, this is like this is a million years ago. But here's the deal. Now, as a kid, you would think after reading all this, I could not wait to get to my buddies and tell them all this, right? When I got back to school at the end of the summer, no, never told a soul, because this was knowledge that evidently even grown men didn't know, because they had to buy a book to find this out. So if they hadn't read the book, so I kept this knowledge locked away, hoping one day, many years later, that I would have a chance to make use of all this, or until I got old enough to realize that this was a scuzzy guy that wrote the book. Now that you say it's a woman, but no, I never told anybody. I never told anybody about it. That was knowledge I was not willing to share.
So when you did get old enough and you were super interested in girls,
I actually forgot. I didn't, I didn't really, I was a kid when I was a little kid when I read this.
You didn't deploy any of this?
Well, I'm not saying there wasn't some things in there that made perfect sense that seemed to work out okay. I mean,
Wow. All right, to my earlier point, tell me that this isn't the entire plot line of a King of the Hill episode, Max. Peggy and Hank find out that Bobby's reading The Sensuous Man.
Yeah, boy, it really is.
But when you're looking back at this and you go, what kind of fool would take a handkerchief? I mean, do you think that that's going to work? What an idiot! It's a bunch of crazy, weird stuff. Well, and I got to be honest, except maybe for that velvet buzzsaw, I don't think that ain't making nobody mad. Okay, that's not making nobody.
There was a movie called The Velvet Buzzsaw that came out in 2019.
I wonder if it's the same Velvet Buzzsaw. Lamar, I'm gonna make you feel better about The Sensuous Man suggesting that you go to town with a hanky before getting in the shower. Have you heard of something? This is one of those things that makes its rounds on social media and in your news feed. And the first time I saw it, I was like, oh, police. Have you ever heard of vabbing? Vabbing? Vabbing?
Vabbing. No.
Yeah. This is for the ladies. So before you get in the shower, or maybe afterward, I guess, you reach down there and get you a good swipe and dab it behind your ears like perfume, and it will drive the men wild. And I read that and thought, that's going to be a no for me. I just can't do it.
It's a shame to waste all that money on perfume if that's all you gotta do.
Yeah, I mean, yes.
Okay, that makes perfect. So this guy's not so crazy, or the girl who wrote this.
Yeah, she was onto something. I just felt like, Kevin and I were talking about it because it had been in his news feed too. And he goes, "Is this real?" And I was like, "I don't know. It's been my experience as a woman that just fogging a mirror and looking vaguely interested is enough to get them wild." Like, what?
Yeah. I mean, you're fishing. You're fishing on a baited field, shooting
in a
fish
barrel.
In a barrel. I mean,
I'm fishing in a barrel with a bunch of starving fish. Yeah, I mean, it's a little easier for a woman.
That's a whole lot more trouble than you actually need to go to.
But I know there's always, this comes in and out of pop culture, this idea of pheromones, and there is some truth to it. Like one of the things that attracts us to each other is actually genetic similarity, and some of that is involved, like pheromones are involved in some of that, which is kind of weird and unsettling to think about, that we're attracted to people that kind of look like us or maybe look like a sibling. Sometimes you'll see couples that look like they could be brother and sister. Bob, who we work with, he and his wife look like they could be brother and sister. And so there is something to that idea of all the sub basement level attraction stuff, pheromones and all of that. But I just feel like after after a man puts in a full day in the field or wherever
Yeah.
and takes a swing at Big Jim and the twins with a bandana and then puts that in his pocket, I just feel like that's going to be unpleasant if I get too close to it. How about you? I'm trying to help the guys out there. I'm thinking maybe, maybe not.
Yeah.
Maybe don't do this.
Yeah, that's probably not your best move. No.
So how did you get The Sensuous Man back into the drugstore after you finished reading it?
Oh, no, I didn't read it all at one day, but I would take it back in and put it like behind a bunch of books, So, and then I'd go dig it back out in a couple of days. I read the whole thing though. I remember.
I'll tell you, Lamar, when I was about that age, I was visiting my aunt who I just adored, my godmother, and she had Xavier Hollander's The Happy Hooker in her bedside table, and I read it. But the central lesson of that book was lost on me because it turns out that for most of my adult life, I was the one paying for it.
Yeah.
I'd have been better off with The Sensuous Man, honestly. Oh, buddy.
Yeah, I guess education is where you get it.
So all I can picture, Lamar, is there's a photograph of Lamar. We put it on social media a while ago. We can dig it up and see if we can post it again. Do you remember the photograph, Max, of Lamar as a teenager riding a unicycle in a clown costume in the town parade?
Yeah.
And you were such a gorgeous boy. I am trying to reconcile the boy in the clown costume on the unicycle with the sensuous man.
Many facets.
So many
facets.
So many.
Like a diamond. Many facets.
Your wife is a realtor. How's that girl find time to leave the house and work is what we're all wondering at this point.
Oh, gosh.
I mean, when you're living with the velvet buzzsaw, how do you get up and go to work? Oh my goodness.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Okay. All right. What are you going to do, right?
Yeah.
We are who we are.
Yeah. All right, that's going to about wrap it up for another peek in the life of this farm boy that's highly educated. Thank you for taking time to listen. I appreciate it because you could be doing anything, but I appreciate you listening to us. We've had a great time. Hope you did. Don't keep it to yourself. Tell somebody. Tell them to check out the Talking Lamar podcast. There's more to come, so don't stop now because I hate a quitter. Join us for the next episode of Talking Lamar. We would love to hear any questions or comments or suggestions. You can email, go to the Bob Sheri app, look down at the bottom, click on the microphone, start talking. We'll hear it. You can also call 844-52-SHERI, SHERI, and leave a message. Until then,